Picture this. Your $10,000 investment skyrockets to $100,000 in just months as silver explodes past $40 an ounce in 2025. The dollar's crashing, banks are hoarding silver in secret, and a global supply crunch is sending prices to the moon. Is it too good to be true? Well, today we'll ask silver guru David Morgan, author of the Silver Manifesto, and the man who's nailed pretty much every silver surge for over 30 years. David, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me back. That's quite an introduction.
So, David, with central banks scrambling, BRICS shaking up the system, and dealers basically selling out silver bars in hours, that's what I'm hearing, is this the wealth transfer of a lifetime? What's your take on what's happening here with gold and silver?
Well, I do believe it could be an epic lifetime event. I mean, when I started, looking into this, and particularly when I, start on the web, but even before that, my initial thought was that this is not a nation state event like the Weimar Republic or Argentina or Turkey or all these other Venezuela, these countries that have had a destruction of the currency. This is a global event. And that means that everyone basically is going to go down if the reserve currency, the dollar, gets hit hard enough. So that greatly concerned me because it was pervasive. It was everyone everywhere. It wasn't just a select group. I mean, even in the Weimar Republic, not that everybody could escape, but you had an opportunity and some people did. There was really no escape for what's taking place now, save gold and silver. I mean, there are other things. Let's be totally honest. You could, have a lumber yard or any hard asset, basically. But for liquidity purposes, it's pretty much the monetary metals. So, yeah, I've been thinking about that as something going into what I call the financial history books as a big event for a long time.
And then that's a really good point. And I saw this tweet on X actually earlier that gold just made, focusing on gold now, then we'll get back to silver, but gold made its 38 all-time high of 2025 with gold futures now up 43% year to date as we're speaking. This puts gold on track for its best year since 1979 as the Fed cuts rates into, 3% plus inflation. Gold knows what's coming next. What is coming next? What do you think gold and silver are trying to tell us here, David?
Well, I've said many times over the years that gold is a barometer, not a thermometer. So if anyone knows anything about a barometer, if you're a pilot or a seaman and, and people generally know, but a barometer is a forecaster of what the weather ahead looks like. And if it gets a slight move, you'll look and say, okay, well, maybe, I'm going to get some clouds or whatever. But when it really moves, which is what's happening, that means, big storm ahead. I'm going to cancel my flight plans. I'm getting my boat back in the harbor. That's what it means. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing an acceleration. We're in the acceleration phase. As you know, and I've kind of been poked at over the years, and it's fine. I mean, I can take it. But, I've said, really, Jeff Christian's the first one that said it to me, was that 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of the time. And I've said that over and over and over. It's not exactly 90 and it's not exactly 10. But the point is that in all markets, not just the metals markets, but in the real estate market, the stock market, you get this acceleration move at the end of the bull market. And that's where you start getting the greatest capital appreciation in the least amount of time. So for this market, as a hypothetical, we might have a year and a half left and gold go, let's say we have a year and a half left and we started when gold broke through 2000. Now we've almost doubled to 4,000. And now what if it goes to 6 and 8? What if it, peaks at 8 in June of 2026? And that's it. I'm not saying that is it. I'm just giving a hypothetical. But you get my point. So there'll be people that come in late to the party that buy gold at 42, if I'm right, okay? So we have to make the preface that this is correct. And is it? We do not know. But assuming that it is something like that, you get it at $4,200 gold and you get out of $5,200 gold and you're leveraged 10 to 1 in the futures market, that's retirement money. So you've made more money in, let's say 8 months than people that have held gold for 30 years or something. Not that I'm judging good or bad. I'm just trying to explain that the acceleration is when you kind of get in this manic panic FOMO now that we talk about modality, where everybody wants to get into the gold market or silver market.
Whoa, let's stop here for just a moment because this is critical. When the next financial crisis hits, accounts will be locked just like 2008, and it will be too late to do anything about it. I've reported on global markets for over 20 years, and what's happening right now is unlike anything we've faced before. The window to act is closing fast, and the opportunity is now. That's why we've created the Private Wealth Playbook. It's free, and it shows you how to move into the proper gold and silver strategies, proven to protect and grow wealth when everything else breaks down. Don't wait until after the crisis hits. Click below or go to DannyReport.com and download the Private Wealth Playbook right now. Now back to the show. Getting back to the warning signs for the captain. Where is it flashing? Is it fear of debt? Fear of what the Fed does? Fear of what happens with war in this world? Where's the fear? Because there's plenty of them.
Well, that's an excellent question. It's a why question, and those are almost impossible to answer because all of what you suggest are correct. For somebody, it's fear of having capital preservation during retirement. For someone else, it's a hedge fund manager who hasn't done a good job and he's going to switch into gold to make his portfolio look better and get a better rating. For let's say a pension fund, they're underperforming, stock market's going down, the real estate portfolio and commercial real estate's losing money rapidly. They move into gold. But it's basically fear or greed, if you put it into psychological terms. And fear is a bigger motivator than greed, actually. So if you fear that your portfolio isn't going to keep up, your retirement isn't going to be there, the dollar's not going to buy as much 6 months from now as it does now, stock market isn't doing what it once did, on all these thoughts of, what could happen or is actually happening, where you're seeing, it's harder and harder to buy the same basket of groceries every time I go to the store. That fear will translate over into action. And that's something that's psychological more than a specific. So there's lots of whys, and everyone has their reason, but it's more than one. This is why you get a really big bull market, because your main motivator for buying gold might be totally different than mine, but they're both as strong psychologically. I've got to make sure my kids get through college, and I'm putting in gold. My life insurance isn't going to pay me what I thought. I'm getting cashing out my life insurance policy. I'm buying gold. Actually, I did that. And I had an insurance license, but I thought, you know what? And I cashed out my whole life policy and I bought gold at 300. And now it's over 3,000. So I did a lot better on that whole life policy, trying to put my weight in the gold than I did by keeping a life insurance policy. Now, I don't want to go too much on a tangent. There are people that should have it. But no, at that point in my life, I really could be more or less self-insured, which is what you want to strive for in my view. I'm sorry I digressed. But I threw that out there.
No, that's a valid point. You just made me think of another point with stocks, because, U.S. stocks are still, the S&P is still high. So here we have a moment in time where stocks are so strong, gold is strong, Americans are more piled into stocks right now than in any time in history. And I see that as a big oops coming. But what does that tell us? Do you find that interesting, David?
Absolutely. I'm going to compliment you. I think this is absolutely one of the most important questions asked by any commentator in our space, and here's why. Because gold is the most negatively correlated asset to the stock market, and it is. And the stock market's going high and gold is going higher. What does that suggest? It suggests that when the stock market does go down, that gold's really going to rock, because we are seeing two, I wouldn't say bubbles, but something that's rather contradictory. If the stock market's strong and gold is negatively correlated, you wouldn't expect gold to be doing well. Gold is setting new highs over and over and over, which is, in a way, if you understand what I just said, could be a little bit of a stomach turning idea. Because if it's this strong now, what happens if we do get a failure in the stock market? Then what's going to happen?
And just one more point on silver, David, because I've always said you're the greatest expert on silver on the planet. Um, you always hear it. Well, silver's doing well because it's just following in gold's trails, right? Is there more at play right now to the silver story?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you go back 25 years, the silver market on an industrial side was 35% of the market. Now it's arguably 60%, maybe some say as high as 70%. You go back 25 years, we mined 550 million ounces of silver on an annual basis. Today, we mine 850 million ounces. So we're up 300 million ounces being mined annually, more than 25 years ago. And the ratio has gone from 35 to maybe almost double. So we are in a position where right now, according to Matt Watson, who does independent metals analysis, who's been on a few channels, very smart guy, does all the metals, put out a graph that I've shown publicly a few times, giving him credit, of course, that right now the industrial demand alone is going to take us into what Jim Dines called a natural corner. When you corner the market, you buy up all the available wheat or rice or corn or silver or whatever it is. Well, if industrial demand alone is going to eat up all the silver, counting jewelry and silverware, is then what happens if there's any investment demand? Well, it takes it beyond belief is what happens. And he has a curve, or actually a graph, I should say, that shows the last 4 years we've been basically in that deficit mode where the only way to make supply and demand balance is by eating the above ground supply. Supply and demand have to meet every year. How does that happen? Well, we have enough of above ground supply to make up that delta, that difference. And that's happened again and again and again. And according to him, and I agree with him, it's happening for the next 25 years because all that we know now, things change. Technology could change things. There's something out there that no one's aware of right now that could change this dynamic. But with all the information
Hmm.
we have right now, we're flat on silver mining and recycling for the next 10 years at least. But demand keeps going higher and higher. Now, where I disagree with Matt is he shows a constant in investment demand of around 200 million ounces a year. I totally disagree with that because as people start to see that barometer and there's a
Yep.
race into the metals, silver will actually take over gold and it will out accelerate gold because gold will get to a point where the average person can't buy an ounce of gold for 4,000, but they can buy a lot of silver for 40. And you're going to see that. That's what happened in 1979. But what happened in 79 was the United States alone. I remember you asked me at the beginning, what was my biggest worry, my biggest concern? And that is it's a worldwide phenomenon. So if you have the world looking at silver as more affordable than gold, it's not just United States, and the US dollar is not trusted to the level that it once was. And you have a $7 trillion sitting on the sidelines in money markets, not knowing what to do. And you take 1% of 7 trillion, that's 70 billion, Daniela, which you know, and that represents about 2 years of total mining supply of silver. And if you don't think that 1% of that money is going to move into the metals and maybe 1% into the silver market, then I should throw away everything I've done for 40.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I was just looking at some of the silver miners across the board, and there's not many, but some of them are just crushing it right now, David.
Yeah, well, it will. And, I want to caution everybody. I mean, as bullish as I am and I sound, the function of a bull market is to throw as many people off as it can. The analogy of a bull rider is really accurate. It's really hard to stay on a bull for 8 seconds. That's the analogy. So we may get a big correction, at some point where, silver goes from, whatever it is today, 47, and, 3 weeks from now, it's down to 40 because the stock market starts to sell off hard in October and everything starts to go down, gold and silver included, the miners included. And that will scare out what we call, weak hands, where people that are, you know, in in a recent time frame or whatever get scared out or what have you. But we are, in my view, far from the ultimate peaking in both the metals, but there will be some really tough times probably when you'll see a correction happen. And we also know that the CME has already raised margin requirements on the metals. And this is something you can almost guarantee. If you look at 1980, you look at 2011, you
Yeah.
look at all these
Yeah.
times where silver and gold really took off. They raised the margin requirements,
That's a
didn't
good
cool
point.
down the market. They raised them again, didn't cool down the
Yep.
market. They raised
Yep.
them again, and they keep raising them until it does cool down the market. In fact, in palladium, when the palladium went bonkers, when Ford Motor Company switched from platinum to palladium for the catalytic converter, you had to put up basically the cost of the contract. In other words, instead of having 20% down or 50% down, you had to put up 100%. It'd be like buying it in the cash market. That's how high they raise margins. So I'm not saying that'll happen again, but it's been done before.
Just want to get a question here about what's happening in China and this monetary superhighway it seems they're building and their strategic expansion of their gold reserves. The strategy involves, as you know, the PBOC, the People's Bank of China's large-scale gold purchases, the Shanghai Gold Exchange's role in facilitating gold flow, and the establishment of a dual foundation of gold and the yuan to challenge dollar dominance. My question, David, is this everything that China's doing? Are they reshaping global monetary finance as we speak?
Well, I've said years ago, and I haven't said it of late, but I use the analogy of, follow the money. I mean, following the money really is a good way to get to the truth. And it's done by, expert journalists or whatever. And what I said was if you follow the gold, which is money and everything else is credit, you go from the British Empire, the pound sterling, which is you know, 92.5% silver. That's what a sterling is. Anyway, you go from Great Britain, United Kingdom having most of the gold and having most of the power, and then that transferred to the United States, having most of the gold, most of the power. And for the last 25 years or more, we've seen the gold go from west to east, where China has most of the gold and most of the power. So from a very elementary look, all you have to do is follow the money, see where it's going, and you can make the conjecture that I made 20 years ago, that the dynamics are favoring China. China will become the monetary power of the world, and it will be leaving the West. And we'll have a lower standard of living in the West, and we'll have a higher standard of living in the East.
Well, just to wrap, David, and I guess following that train of thought, I mean, I know offline we were speaking about what's going on here in America, and I know the folks often, people watching appreciate your philosophical thoughts on the divide we're experiencing, and just some takeaways here from you on how you see the state of things in the country right now.
Well, I see it as a heartbreaker, really. I mean, being a boomer and knowing the freedom that we had as kids. I mean, we didn't have to wear helmets on our bikes. Not that's a bad thing. I'm not against that 'cause you should, but we didn't think about it in those days. Seat belts came in when I was a youngster, but cars didn't have seat belts. And you know, I don't know if we're overprotective. In some ways, I think we are. The point being is that we had a lot more freedom. And now we're in a situation where we keep looking to authority more and more, and regardless of what political persuasion you are. It seems that both sides are looking for their hero to come in and fix things for them rather than take self-responsibility. I was into film, the Four Horsemen film, as you know, Daniela, and way before the Make America Great Again slogan came. I said in that film, and I actually got pretty emotional during this one part, and they asked me a question, I forget what it was, but I said, we've really seen the decline of America. We used to, we're looking for it in the wrong places. We're looking for it in the right food or the right clothing or the right movie or the right house or whatever. What made America great, I said this way before the MAGA thing, was that we had high integrity. And I try to shout it out. It was integrity that made America great. that we have a set of laws that are the same rules, laws, accountability for everybody. Everybody's treated the same. It doesn't matter if you're a senator or, a janitor. It does not matter. Well, it does matter now. The Basically, the more money you have, uh, the more possibility you have of not paying true justice. And then we've gone even warped it more than that, that it depends maybe on your political persuasion, whether the crime, the punishment fits the crime. I mean, I could go on and on. Basically, when you start to distort an absolute, a truth that's based on common law that everyone understands, that's fair to everyone, you have a pretty sound society. When you start moving away from that more and more, and you favor a certain class over another one or the wealthy over everyone else, which is what's happened more than anything, is a wealth disparity where the elite, it's a have and have not society. And it's kind of what you see in South America. And I have friends there, and I'm not putting anyone down. I hope I'm coming across sincerely here. It's just a fact. There's the rich, and then there's everyone else. And that's what's happening to America and other countries. Canada's similar. And these are things that cause revolutions, whether hopefully peaceful ones. But we are in the position that I never ever dreamed of, looking at the analytical part of what's happening to our money and what I think about that. That pretty much has come true based on, based on all my work, study, and my passion for this part of, what I make a living at. But I did not have the ability to see it clearly on the social side. I did say, and have said for years, that the further you debase the currency, the more the moral structure of society debases. I knew that, but I didn't envision it going to the level it's gone to.
Wow, you just shook me to my core. I literally felt your words going through my body. Gave me goosebumps, David. Um, I thank you. This was an incredible conversation. Always, I am so grateful for you, David. Thank you.
Well, this will, I'm choking up, but it's people like us, and it's not, it's the message, not the messenger, really, but for giving people a platform, because this is what's powerful. Speaking truth to power really, really does resonate, and it does help. And whether or not the future is going to get brighter or not, I don't know. But I do know speaking truth will help in a great many ways.
Well, at a time when many are afraid to speak, scared to speak, I appreciate you and thank you for your courage for speaking up
You're
for us.
welcome.
And thank you all for watching. We'll have more great content. I'll always ask you to subscribe to our channel to help support us, keeps us going, helps us keep creating and getting great speakers like David to come back on the show. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.